Hey guys, welcome to Bubble Man's World. Bubble Man here, and I'm actually just getting in my truck here, about to head down to see Chris Bennet, who's apparently released a new book. And you know, on my way, I was thinking, oh geez, I gotta charge up the Puffco. But luckily, in this particular vehicle, I've got this wonderful 115 volt boom shaboom. Sorry about the terrible quality there for a second. So I am going to charge up my Puffco while I drive into the city. Nice and easy. Plug it in. Boom. Plug it into here. Drop it into my cup holder, which it actually fits quite beautifully. And I've got about a 20-minute drive to get to Chris's. I think we're going to do a short little interview with him. Talk about his new book that he's got coming out. And yeah, after that, we were thinking of getting on the boosted boards or the Evolve, whatever one he plans to bring out today, and maybe do a little bit of a seawall around Vancouver's downtown area there, Stanley Park at least. So, of course, I thought, bring the camera and film a little video. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to bring you guys along. All right.
Whoa, 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 whoa. My chalice strike lightning as the morning break. My heavens open wide, the sun was up in my face. The wisdom of the wise keep my head set straight. With a sweet odor cannabis. Lord, try to perfection, smoke synchronicity. I love the sweet dry cones. From the skunk we get the full melt. Dry sip and the rising. I love the sweet dry cones. I tell you when the rest of man consume the meditation bind to CB1 and CB2. Can have a nine receptors in the brain and body. Happiness for me and you. Herbalist, vaporize and chalice. Man a herbalist, the cannabis specialist. Man a herbalist, vaporize and chalice. Man a herbalist, the cannabis specialist. Herbalist, THC in my spliff. Herbalist, the cannabis specialist. Herbalist, man a herbalist. Herbalist, the cannabis specialist. The officer pull me over and him say beg you a search. Him traffic the bag if it a serious skirt. Pull it up to him nose and give it a sniff. Him turn around and tell crash I say yes, and I also got hash. Full melt edibles, all that. Dry sip make you cool and relax. And if you get some, you must come back. Cause man a herbalist, vaporize and chalice. Man a herbalist, the cannabis specialist. Herbalist.
Originals, indigenous, vegan just can't stop me. Sinassi I, Marcus I, tell them me money well got. Originals, indigenous, vegan just can't stop me. Sinassi I, Marcus I, tell them me money well got. Original creator, tell them from the beginning, no carbon copy now. Now we no copy, think be careful. And the journey you travel in and out, how that you pick. You know you got to lead medicinal plant. That am I offering. I tell you tired. Tell them no worry, it bring can follow me good sex and bring sorry.
To keep up. Do my best to keep up. Alright, welcome to Bubble Man's World, everybody. I'm here with Chris Bennet. Geez, how would I even introduce Chris? I don't have to introduce Chris. He's been on Hash Church enough. You guys know him as the cannabis historian. He's been writing books about cannabis, delving into the occult connections with cannabis, and he has written, oh look at that, he's saying hi. He's written another amazing book here. What's the title?
Liber 420, Cannabis, Magical Herbs, and the Occult.
Look at that.
Right, big one.
Serious thick book. What do you think, Kitty? Mr. Kitty? Look at that right there.
About 800 pages of madness. Marijuana madness and magic.
Well, and what number is this for books for you?
This is my fourth, well, 2 co-authored books, and this is my second personally authored book.
Okay, cool. Cool, excellent. So this obviously has taken you a serious amount of time. You've been compiling. We were talking earlier, a little off camera. Your cat is hilarious. We were talking a little bit earlier off camera in regards to, you know, sort of how Chris has been able to, from writing his other books, been able to finally compile and create these connections that he's found over the years.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing leads to another, and having a background with different cultures and their historical use of cannabis helps to understand later references and how they came about and stuff. Like, say, for instance, Islamic influence has really influenced later European use of cannabis, and you can see this in things like magic. Via like magical texts like the 10th century Gayat al-Hakim, which refers to cannabis, and then was translated into the Picatrix in the 13th century when it was translated into Latin and entered Europe, and it's one of the pivotal documents of Western magical traditions. It just kind of starts with this, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that has a recipe, for instance, for a pound and a bit of cannabis resin mixed with stag blood and other ingredients burnt in order to invoke the messenger of the moon in the pillar of smoke that forms over this fuming pile. And so, you know, that's one way. And then another way is in alchemy. You know, figures like Avicenna and Geber, well-known Arabic alchemical figures, and before them Zosimos, all made reference to cannabis preparations and tinctures and whatnot. And this is why we find these sorts of references in the works of European alchemists like Paracelsus and Cardano, who have recipes for cannabis infusions in their works in the Latin again. So yeah, you know, so you know, having a knowledge of this kind of helps to bring all this together.
That's okay. Yeah, we got phones. Sometimes they ring. Sometimes the cat stares at the camera. Sometimes, you know, all these different things are happening. So. Well, we'll pick it up later, off camera, no problem. Yeah, it's very unique information that you've got. I have not read the book. Chris was just telling me you're the only person to be able to interview me that hasn't read the book.
Yeah.
But it's pretty new.
It's pretty new. Just came out April 20th. And like so, you know, it comes out on actually in 1918, April 20th. Aleister Crowley and a guy who I learned while I was writing this book actually lived on my street here in North Vancouver in Deep Cove that I grew up in, did a cannabis ritual. And it's funny that, so, you know, it comes out on the centennial anniversary of that. It came out.
Centennial anniversary.
Yeah.
Damn. That's awesome. Well, definitely I can tell you, if you guys are going to pick up this book and you're going to read this information, it's not going to be information that is common knowledge. And like I feel like I know a fair bit about cannabis over the years. I've definitely delved into it and geeked out on it pretty hard. But Chris's information is always stuff that's a surprise to me. It's always new, and you know, I don't always know all the names. But over the years, he's definitely educated me to Rabelais and to Crowley and to some of these different guys' connections with cannabis. And I'm always looking more forward to sort of connecting more of the dots as he's done through, you know, 11th and 12th and 13th, all the different centuries that this information has passed through. It's incredible, really.
Well, you know, I'm lucky to live in this like pivotal time when things like Google Books, where they've scanned like all these medieval and Renaissance era manuscripts into Google Books, and you can search through them in word searches, and cannabis in Latin is spelt the same way as it is in English. So you're able to go back into a lot of these variations, and then when you know other spellings, the variations of it as well, you're able to search all these documents, and then it's just a matter of finding out what the references say, where you're finding the identification of cannabis. And so I know some Latin translators and hired some Latin translators, and was able to find a lot of really cool old recipes and information that nobody's ever really written about for centuries, you know.
Right.
So it's pretty fun stuff and pretty interesting as well if you like cannabis.
You kind of got to give it up to some of these old alchemists from back in the day. They really had to seek this shit out.
Oh yeah, no, they were doing a lot of experimentation. Like a guy like Paracelsus, for instance, his recipe for cannabis arcanum, which is a tincture preparation, was for epilepsy. And we see all these people getting treated for epilepsy now. This is like 15th century, 16th century. And he's already well aware of the medicinal qualities of this herb for that particular debilitating purpose. It's being used for.
You got to wonder how many tens of thousands of people have suffered between the 15th century when he came up with that information to today, where it's like it took Sanjay Gupta or whatever going on CNN and being like, oh, I was wrong about cannabis.
Yeah.
And this is. It's and it's a lot of it is children suffering, and not. I guess we always feel that children suffering is obviously a little bit worse, but suffering is suffering. People suffering is kind of a pretty big downer.
Oh yeah, well in the ancient world, to treat people of something like epilepsy, it was comparable to exorcism of a demon.
I was going to say they must have thought they were possessed.
Yeah, epilepsy was thought to be demonic possession well into medieval Renaissance times. It was like a miracle cure, you've exorcised this demon right out of them.
Well, interesting that off camera, before we were talking, I was sort of talking about how I feel that cannabis is this sort of, whether metaphorical or whether you want to think of it as exactly that, it tends to close these, metaphorically, I this is my own personal opinion, that it seems to close these portholes in which demons possess people, and whether that's, people thinking bad thoughts, people doing bad actions, people getting hammered or drugged out on different drugs where they don't seem to be themselves. And then the medicinal components of cannabis helping regulate and getting people's biological functions back in order, getting their endocannabinoid system into homeostasis. That really would be the opposite of, the demonic possession of epilepsy and all these other ailments.
It's funny because in the ancient world, predating germ theory, there was this whole theory about different demons that were present. You could see if they were present by different ailments and symptoms and stuff like that. And so if you had a cough with a rash on your groin and blah blah, you had this particular demon,
That's scary.
Yeah. So that was, but it kind of followed along the same lines as germ theory, of contagion and symptoms and all that type of stuff.
And that's going back fairly far.
Oh, that's going back like thousands of years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we're going to hit the Puffco while we talk a little bit more about Chris's book, and then we're actually going to head out on the boosted boards. Perhaps the Evolve will make an appearance. What we're going to do, the Seawall?
Seawall, yeah, for sure. Sounds great. Yeah, as I was saying to Mark earlier, I'm only doing interviews about the book with people who read it. He didn't read it. But if you electric skateboard and you want to go and you can rip on an electric skateboard, then I can bypass that particular rule if we go for a ride. So
well, I appreciate it, and I will absolutely read your book, man. There's for me, there's an enormous amount of information here that I don't know, and like you, learning from writing your books and connecting things and putting the dots together to be able to see these different patterns. I look forward to that as well.
Oh, cool.
So it's going to take, obviously, reading the book. This is not light reading. This is seriously heavy reading, like that. You definitely have to kind of turn up the intellect a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's like I'm out to prove stuff. So it's like takes references and citations and footnotes and bibliographies and makes for a slightly drier, although I try to keep it entertaining with weird facts,
Looks like a great book, man. What are some of the highlights that you enjoyed the most connecting?
I love the stuff about the Templars. There's been claims by a number of authors like Robert Anton Wilson and a doctor in Italy wrote a book about medieval medicine.
Lily?
And no, not Lily.
Dr. Who?
DCOS.
Oh, okay.
Soso, I think his name is. Numbers of books about aloe vera have it as well. That the Templars had this cannabis wine that was a preparation of cannabis aloe in a palm wine. And I started digging around trying to find that, and I could find no references to it, but I did find that cannabis was seized at 2 Templar sites in their raids, considerable amounts of it. The form isn't described. And they had some sort of a contract with Saracens, Arabs, to grow cannabis for them in Spain, and Arabs weren't particularly known for growing the industrial varieties of cannabis.
And what
So
year?
it's-
What year?
This is like
this?
12th, 13th century.
Oh wow.
And so it adds credence to these claims about the cannabis wine, and also a pope who was friendly with the Templars. The Templars were around for a few centuries, and before they were accused of their heresies, they were quite friendly. They were part of the Catholic Church, basically.
Right.
And a pope who was friendly with them released a medical treatise that included a cannabis-infused wine for a number of ailments. And in the same time period, a Mason, Villard de Honnecourt, his Masonic journal, he'd spent time in the Holy Land, and it had a bunch of illustrations of different masonry techniques from the Holy Land, but the only page of written text in it is a cannabis-infused wine. So it seems likely that there was some, awareness of that type of a preparation coming in. And there's this interesting connection that the Templars are very connected to the whole Grail mythology. And the term Grail itself has etymological connections to the Graha, which is the vessel that Soma and the Persian counterpart of Soma, Heomer, were partaking in.
Right.
And it's like a holy vessel where the psychoactive beverage is taken in. And there's some interesting stuff in that mythology, and others have suggested that there may be some connection between the Grail mythology and the hashish infusion used by the Templars' medieval, sometimes enemies, sometimes allies, known as the Hashishin, group of Islamic heretics that were reputed to have used hashish. And there's controversy about that, and I answer a lot of that controversy and go over a lot of the historical material. And my view on the Hashishin is this is a carryover from the earlier Persian Zoroastrian traditions, where we read in the first few centuries ADs accounts of these Persian psychonauts taking cannabis-infused wines and then having otherworldly voyages under the influence. And I'm talking potent extracts. Like sometimes they drink like as much as 7 cups of these cannabis-infused wines, and these guys would be knocked out for a couple of days, and then they come back and report these visionary experiences they had. And it was thought to be that their soul had left their body. That's where these type of ideas came from people having drug experiences,
So are you kind of along the lines of, I saw Paul Stamets speak recently, and he brought up Terence McKenna's stoned monkey theory of the sort of like how consciousness got this spark into really all these different things that we've, the creation of, from engineering and like complex civilizations and all these different concepts. Do you kind of come from the belief system that psychedelics and psychoactive substances?
Well, cannabis for sure, like Dr. Jeffrey Guy. What do I do, just hit it?
Yeah.
Or do I pull this? Or?
You don't have to do anything, just hit it. I have it nicely set up on light. It was the Acapulco Gold that I set up for you. Just a nice little dab there.
Is it all one dabber?
Yeah, there'll be a couple of rips in there. That's just balance, don't worry about it.
So is this electric or did he heat?
Yeah, it's electric. I just push the button and then it heats up the little atomizer on the bottom, and it's all ceramic. And yeah, we've come a long way as we're talking about the history of cannabis from thousands of years ago, as we literally hit the most up-to-date sort of futuristic.
The latest alchemical.
Right. These guys would have tripped 1,000 years ago if they would have been like, hey, here, try this.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. So you were saying about Dr. Jeffrey Guy?
And John McPartland, they wrote a book, an article about cannabis being appearing at the time of the Great Leap Forward, where many of these advancements in human culture took place: invention of the wheel, control of fire, these type of things. And we know that from archaeological evidence that for at least fiber purposes, our relationship of cannabis goes back about 25,000 years. You know what I mean? So the oldest evidence which it puts its use into getting close to the time period of the Great Leap Forward, when many of these technological and cultural advancements were made. You know what I mean? And they speculate it was the ability of cannabis to cause new novel ways of thinking.
Right. And we know there's always a group of people that are afraid of new novel ways of thinking, or even change of any kind in general. And so as you do research like this, does it seem as though the prohibition of cannabis has been around for almost as long as cannabis?
there's always been people that have felt rigorous by other people using cannabis for a long time. You know, you see this with the disappearance of Soma and Haoma in Persia and India, and also, you know, in psychoactive substances in general. You know, it's like religions like Christianity and Judaism, they're religions that you're taught. You know, it's not really about your own personal experience. It's more what's the stories in this book, and this is what we believe. And anything that offers like a hands-on experiential type of thing, or the concept of that God lies within you, is a real threat to that hierarchical way
They
of
seem
thinking.
to replace all of that with faith.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, don't, you know, have your own experience.
Yeah.
Like, just have faith
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
what we're telling you is accurate and that it's going to help you on in your life. Although, you know, I have known people who have used their religious belief systems to help them, and I certainly don't mock people's religious belief systems, but...
I guess I do mock, you know what I mean? It's like, I just see, like, I take a look at the world around me, and I just see so much problem caused by this stuff, and so much of it seems like so much hooey the more I, you know, look into it. It's like I've really studied religion for a long time.
You have. You've gone in a lot deeper than I have, for sure. For me, it's just not my fight. I'm like, if that's what you want to do, no problem. I always am refreshed by some of the things you'll say on Facebook and in some of your posts where you're just like, no holds barred guy here. Just like, just like...
Yeah.
Some of it's pretty comical, for
I'm
sure.
sure I lose as many supporters as I gain, you know what I mean?
Well, but whatever, you stand by your opinion,
yeah.
and you have done a lot more research on it than your average person. So.
Yeah.
And it's true, you know, it's right up there with, it's hard to not connect religion with prohibition, because it seems like since religion has been alive, they've prohibited thoughts, experiences, you know,
Yeah.
different things. There's always been these rules that really would be construed as a type of prohibition.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
To the extreme, really.
And it's all part of the human experience, you know what I mean? Like these things, you know, a lot of these things may have served a better purpose in their original times than they serve us 2,000 years later, and people are trying to force this Bronze Age laws and mentality on 21st century man. It's just like, you know, pretty ludicrous.
It's absolutely ludicrous in that sense when you think of these things that are multiple thousands of years old. That, I mean, even when these guys wrote, you know, the Constitution for, you know, the U.S., just like, you know, in 1776 or whenever that thing got penned. That's it doesn't really kind of, you know, when it, like, just to simply go into like the gun one, like to bear arms and protect oneself. It's like, man, that thing used to be like loading it and pushing it down, and now it's like submachine gun or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
There definitely there's been a lot of change. Maybe it might be a good idea to update the scriptures.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, I think the evangelicals have pretty well taken things to the limit. So if Jesus doesn't show up now, then, you know, I think they should call it a day.
Yeah, he's got a very short period of time to show up at this point in time.
I'm sure those guys will do what they can to get Armageddon going in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Before long, you know, for sure.
Well, we have cannabis on our side, so we're very lucky.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like my whole experience with cannabis actually started with the religious experience I had in like 89, 90. Reading the Bible and, you know, reading the book of Revelation stoned, and then reading the last chapter about the tree of life in the book of Revelation with its many fruits, its 12 manners of fruit, and its leaves for the healing of the nations. And that's really what set me on my path. That was like the life-changing moment, you know what I mean? So as much as I deride it, you know, at the same time I realize its role in, you know, in the collective consciousness of human history. And I think that what cannabis offers is a new way of looking at that whole thing. And I think when you really understand the history of cannabis and its role in, you know, Hinduism and Sikhism and Taoism and Buddhism and Judaism and Christianity, Islam and Christianity, in our case particularly here in the Western world, and you take a look at these references to cannabis and the way it was used, it becomes as much of a threat to fundamentalist religion as Darwin's theory of evolution was to the myths of Adam and Eve and creation in Genesis. Because what it shows is that the prophets of the Bible In this case, say Moses, for example, if we take a look at the claims about the Hebrew term cannabis being cannabis, which have been around for about a century now. You take Moses, and he takes about 9 pounds of cannabis, and he puts it in with some myrrh and cinnamon and some holy oil, and he places this on his body, and then he takes some of this oil and he places it on the altar of incense, and he goes inside the enclosed tent, the tent of the meeting, and he speaks to the Lord of the pillar of smoke over that altar of incense. He becomes like a shaman, you know, and shamans like in South America and Africa today, ingesting psychoactive plants and interpreting this as some
going
sort of
into the
divine revelation or spiritualism, you know, a spiritual possession or something like that. And this is something that these fundamental religions have rallied against whenever they've come into contact. And we can see it in the medieval Renaissance period in the cases of both magic and alchemy, and the church's reaction to these things and the use of plants. And so it's a real fundamental threat to it, because it's like first-hand experiential, which is what they don't offer, and something they try to suppress, but it also reveals the origins in things that they try to suppress via witchcraft or coming to the New World and stopping peyote and mushroom ingesting religions and that type of thing. So I think it's very symbolic on a cultural level, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's heavy for sure. Hopefully we don't have too many more centuries of prohibition and of this mentality of this group of people that just seems to want to prohibit this plant. It just seems like a great crime against humanity that has gone on for centuries.
Well, you see when it does get out, how it blossoms, you know what I mean? So there must be like over 150 dispensaries here in Vancouver, and many of them are thriving, and people there are pleasant and happy, and all walks of life are coming in and getting cannabis. And there's almost like a community center type of atmosphere at some of them, you know what I mean? And people really do feel a connection over this herb. And it's one of the few things in this world that we pass from hand to hand like that, and hand to mouth, in any sort of ways. And it's kind of like the people's natural communion, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, I certainly experienced it at 420 this year with the tens of thousands of people. I don't pretend to guess how many were there. Some people say 20,000, some people say 50,000, some people say 100,000. There were tens of thousands of people, and it's always such an incredible experience on the stage, watching everyone light up right at 420 and see this cloud of smoke rise up, and it's really quite a powerful thing. I'm sure that the same way that there is power in focused thought, like prayer.
Yeah.
There, you know, that's a ritual right there. You know, everyone lighting up and all the positive vibes, no one getting hurt and no one fighting and no one getting arrested.
Yeah, imagine if that was a beer garden.
Oh my God! It could be,
the city would be in chaos.
It would be insane.
It'd be still on fire. We'd still be putting out fire.
Oh my God! Well, we know that because it's happened during our NHL teams losing and other sorts of things.
The city doesn't talk about making the NHL pay for the wreck of the city, but they sure want to like cry the blues about anything to do with cannabis.
That's it. And I saw Mark had posted something recently in regards to why we need to still be able to do this, because it's that we're proud of our culture.
Yeah.
And it's the same way Pride is proud of their culture. Yeah, it's not illegal to be gay anymore, but it doesn't mean they can't still be proud of their gay culture. And they're going to have their parades, and they're going to have their gatherings, and
it's our victory day. Now, you know, after legalization, it's our victory day, man.
Exactly.
You know, and we suffered a lot to see it happen, and we've seen our friends jailed and worse, and we've won it.
True.
It's our day, man.
I feel it. Well, thanks for joining me, dude.
Yeah.
Or letting me join you, for that matter. You're at your place, and it's always really interesting to hear what you have to say, and I'll definitely look forward to reading your book. I'm going to pick up a copy for sure, and hopefully you guys do as well. Where can they grab a copy of this?
I can find it on Amazon. Just search Liber 420. It'll come up pretty quick, and check it out. And there's some in-depth interviews on Culture podcast and on Reality Sandwich. About the book you can check out as well.
I'll put the links in the comments section of the video, and in the meantime, I think we're going to hit the boards and bring you guys with us so you can go for a little sunshiny Vancouver Day skateboard with us.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's going to be a riot.
Awesome. Let's do it.